Excuse me. The testator, John Smith, wills as follows. Article 1. The testator bequeaths the following assets to his eldest son, Tom Johnson. What was read aloud included the family home and land where I grew up with my dad, as well as the names and addresses of other properties and vacant houses he owned in the countryside. The lawyer continued calmly. To summarize the rest, all debts including unpaid taxes, hospital bills, funeral and burial costs, and any cash or assets not mentioned in this will would be inherited by my brother. Everything went dark before my eyes. In the end, all I was left with was the condo whose rights I inherited just before my dad passed away. I really didn't want to leave the family home, but I couldn't afford the upkeep, and it was too big for just me. So, reluctantly, I took over the rights to the condo my dad had repeatedly mentioned. But compared to my dad's vast wealth, it was just a drop in the bucket. We did it. We did it, Tom. That man's fortune is ours now. My mom was ecstatic, her voice shrill with excitement, completely opposite to me. That annoying voice didn't matter to me in my current state of apathy. Yeah, that's right, Mom. I'm not thrilled about covering Dad's funeral and burial costs, but considering his inheritance, it's a small price to pay. My brother laughed coarsely this time. Since the funeral arrangements hadn't been made yet, my late dad lay in the home's parlor. I felt overwhelmed with guilt at the thought that these two awful voices might be reaching my dad. However, I wasn't in a position to say anything, having not been entrusted with any inheritance. Then, suddenly, my brother turned to me and directed his coarse laughter my way. Oh, by the way, you didn't get any inheritance despite all that time you spent taking care of Dad. His words stabbed into my heart like a knife. To be precise, it wasn't that I got nothing. But what I did get was just a condo unit meant to keep me out of the way. If asked whether I was happy about it, it wasn't something I could celebrate wholeheartedly. Was I been taken advantage of? Taking me in and raising me was all for his own retirement. And when he became bedridden and found me less useful than he thought, he tried to push me away. Such heavy emotions took over me. My name is Lisa Smith. Currently, I live alone with my dad, John. We used to be a family of 4 with my mom, Mary, and my brother, Tom, but my parents got divorced when I was young. I learned only recently, which is already decades after their divorce, that my mother's affair was the cause. I don't remember much, but honestly, I don't recall my mom treating me well. She always doted on my brother and seemed to be hard on me. That's probably why, when my parents divorced, my brother went with my mom and I was taken in by my dad. I loved my dad. My dad was well off, and after divorcing my mom, he could have hired help but chose to raise me on his own. He always participated in school events and, though clumsy, took the effort to make lunches for me. Due to work, he came home late on weekdays, but he took the lead in doing chores on weekends. For example, if I wanted to bake cookies, he'd join me as a substitute mom despite his inexperience. Despite being busy balancing chores, work, and parenting, he occasionally took me out to play. He poured all his love into me as if to say he was both father and mother in the absence of my mom. So even without a mom, even if I was sometimes bullied for having a single parent, I was okay. It's fine because I have my dad. Honestly, I didn't feel anxious or dissatisfied without my mom. In fact, I thought it was better that she wasn't around. The reason I felt this way was because my mom was careless with money. Even after the divorce, it was probably to fulfill his duty as a father. My dad was in contact with my mom through calls and texts to pay for my brother's child support. That much, I could understand. However, my mom wasn't satisfied with just that and contacted him at every opportunity to extract more money. The reason being, my mom called way too often, and I frequently saw my dad exasperated or even angry during those calls. After the calls, my dad would always reassure me by saying, "It's nothing." However, I often heard him mention my mom's name during those calls. So, it was easy to imagine that my mom was careless with money. That's why having my dad was enough for me. I didn't need a mom. If possible, I hoped our involvement wouldn't get any worse. That's what I wished for. But alas, fate is cruel, and no matter how I struggled, I couldn't change the fact that I was also her child. I realized this when my dad fell ill and became bedridden despite treatment efforts. "Dad, dinner's ready." Carrying a tray with meals for the both of us, I knocked lightly 3 times before entering the room. The scent of spring gently wafted in through the window I had opened to let in some fresh air. "Lisa. I'm always sorry. We agreed not to say that anymore, right?" That sounded like what someone from an old historical drama would say. I couldn't help but smile, but my dad still looked apologetic. "Come on, if you keep looking like that, you won't get better. Let's eat together, okay?" I placed the tray on the bedside table and slowly adjusted the angle of the hospital bed. Then, after saying a word, I gently cleaned my dad's mouth. This was a caregiving method I learned from Mr. Mike Brown, who helps care for my dad while I'm at work. Apparently, doing this makes it easier to taste and enjoy meals. After finishing the cleaning, I reached for my dad's meal. When you think of bedridden patients, you imagine liquid food, but according to a pro like Mr. Brown, that's not always the case. Even if someone is bedridden, their ability to swallow or chew varies from person to person. The important thing is to choose meals that suit the individual. My dad's chewing ability has weakened, but his swallowing ability hasn't declined much yet. That's why he's mainly eating soft foods that look like regular meals. Of course, to keep my dad from feeling lonely, I made my meal look the same as his. First, I used a spoon to scoop a bite of my dad's meal. When I brought it to his mouth, he accepted it willingly. I watched as he slowly chewed and swallowed. Then, I took a bite of my own meal. And then I'd scoop another bite for him and bring it to his mouth. It was a cycle. "What's wrong? Oh, are you full already?" I was careful about the portion sizes. But I'm just an amateur without any caregiving qualifications. I couldn't deny that I still had a lot to learn. "I still think it'd be better for me to go into a facility, Lisa." "There you go again. I've told you before, I'm fine. You've raised me all this time, let me at least repay you this much." I tried to sound cheerful and unfazed. But that doesn't mean his words didn't hurt me. My dad often said he should move into a facility and that he'd give me the condo he owned. Was he being considerate of me, or was it that my amateur attempts were stressing him out? Honestly, I don't know which it is. But if I were in my dad's position, I think it might be the latter. Maybe there are limits to home care after all. I shook my head to dispel the dark thoughts. I'm not alone. I hired Mr. Mike Brown, a professional caregiver, to help with home care. So, I'm sure it'll work out somehow. Just as I was firming up my resolve, my dad's phone rang. After my dad became bedridden, I changed the settings so I'd know just from the ringtone who it was without looking at the screen, though I felt a bit guilty about it. The distinctive ringtone sounded, and I couldn't help but frown. "Aren't you going to answer it?" "No, it's fine. It's probably nothing important anyway." When I said that, my dad looked like he wanted to say something but didn't. He probably guessed who the caller was from my attitude. It was my mom. Despite everything, she's still my mother and the person raising my dad's biological son. I couldn't avoid telling her that dad had collapsed and become bedridden. So, as soon as it was confirmed that my dad would be bedridden, I told my mom about the situation. Then she said something unbelievable. "Oh, really? So, when's the funeral?" "Of course, Tom will get an inheritance too, right?" I still vividly remember the words she said and the anger I felt at that moment. Even though my dad is bedridden, he's still alive and well. Yet all she seems to care about is my dad's inheritance and money. Since then, whenever I answer calls on behalf of my dad, I make sure never to take calls from her. I felt bad for my dad, but I changed the ringtone so I'd know immediately when it was her calling. It's not like I didn't consider the possibility of her calling for other reasons. But my dad has already finished paying the child support he owed. And considering she immediately brought up the inheritance when I told her about my dad's condition. I can't imagine she's calling just for small talk, especially not almost every day. It's more likely she's checking on his condition to see when she can get her hands on the inheritance rather than out of concern for him. Why should I have to answer such rude calls? Besides, my brother hasn't shown his face even once. He must have been influenced by our self-indulgent and selfish mom. My brother, whose face I can barely remember, hasn't come to the house even once since Dad collapsed. I can understand that there were reasons he couldn't come when Dad was well, but even though they're divorced, he's still his father. Wouldn't it be polite to at least come see him once? Well, it's pointless to expect anything from them. A good-for-nothing mom and a brother who was likely influenced by her. There's no point relying on former relatives who are more of a nuisance than help. I just need to do the best I can. And so, while being rebuffed by Dad and getting a lot of help from Mr. Brown, 2 years passed. My dad finally passed away. Oh, this day has finally come. My mom's unpleasant voice echoed in the living room. Next to her sat my brother, whom I hadn't seen in a while, looking smug. I sat across the table from those two unpleasant people with the lawyer who helped draft my dad's will. I really didn't want to tell my mom that Dad had died. But it wasn't something I could hide forever, and my dad had left a vast inheritance. Not to mention the funeral arrangements. So, reluctantly, I told my mom about Dad's death, and she openly rejoiced over the phone and said she'd come right over to discuss the inheritance. My dad's funeral hasn't even taken place yet, and still, here we are. So, knowing it was a stretch, I asked the lawyer to make time for us, and that's how we got here. Here is the will left by your father, John Smith. As you can see, it is unopened and written in his own handwriting. Skip the spiel and show it to us already. Like mother, like son. My brother interrupted and urged him on. I apologized to the lawyer, but he shook his head as if to say not to worry about it. Then I will open it on your behalf. The lawyer opened the seal with a letter opener he had. The letter inside was written in my dad's handwriting, matching the date and name on the envelope. Excuse me. The testator, John Smith, wills as follows. Article 1. The testator bequeaths the following assets to his eldest son, Tom Johnson. What was read aloud included the family home and land where I grew up with my dad, as well as the names and addresses of other properties and vacant houses he owned in the countryside. The lawyer calmly continued. To summarize the rest, all debts including unpaid taxes, hospital bills, funeral and burial costs, and any cash or assets not mentioned in this will would be inherited by my brother. Everything went dark before my eyes. In the end, all I was left with was the condo whose rights I inherited just before my dad passed away. I really didn't want to leave the family home, but I couldn't afford the upkeep, and it was too big for just me. So, reluctantly, I took over the rights to the condo my dad had repeatedly mentioned. But compared to my dad's vast wealth, it was just a drop in the bucket. We did it. We did it, Tom. That man's fortune is ours now. My mom was ecstatic, her voice shrill with excitement, completely opposite to me. That annoying voice didn't matter to me in my current state of apathy. Yeah, that's right, Mom. I'm not thrilled about covering Dad's funeral and burial costs, but considering his inheritance, it's a small price to pay. My brother laughed coarsely this time. Since the funeral arrangements hadn't been made yet, my late dad lay in the home's parlor. I felt overwhelmed with guilt at the thought that these two awful voices might be reaching my dad. However, I wasn't in a position to say anything, having not been entrusted with any inheritance. Then, suddenly, my brother turned to me and directed his coarse laughter my way. Oh, by the way, you didn't get any inheritance despite all that time you spent taking care of Dad. His words stabbed into my heart like a knife. To be precise, it wasn't that I got nothing. But what I did get was just a condo unit meant to keep me out of the way. If asked whether I was happy about it, it wasn't something I could celebrate wholeheartedly. Was I just being taken advantage of? Taking me in and raising me was all for his own retirement. And when he became bedridden and found me less useful than he thought, he tried to push me away. Such heavy emotions took over me. After that, my brother and the lawyer exchanged some documents, but it went in one ear and out the other for me. Honestly, I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about my heartless mom, my brother who took after her, and even my dad, whose love I had trusted, all of them. A few days passed since that miserable day of inheritance proceedings. As for my dad's funeral, my brother is handling the arrangements as stated in the will. However, wanting to cut costs, he kept getting quotes from different places, and the arrangements weren't progressing at all. This isn't right. Dad deserves better. In the family home's parlor where my dad's body lay in repose, my quiet voice echoed softly as I spoke. If we kick her out suddenly, we'll look like the bad guys. My brother said that, and he made me stay at the family home until the funeral was over. Perhaps it also means I'm keeping watch over Dad's remains. Honestly, it didn't matter where I was. If I stayed at the family home, memories of my dad would inevitably come back. But going back to the condo I was given wouldn't change anything either. However, it was better to stay at the family home as much as possible than to have my brothers trample over the memories there. Come to think of it. Suddenly, I remembered that day. My mom and brother, elated after getting my dad's inheritance, left without even looking at his face. After seeing them off, the lawyer quietly handed me something. Lisa, I received this not as a lawyer but as a friend of your father. John entrusted me with it, asking that I give it to his daughter if anything happened to him. Unfortunately, as stated in the will, this and everything inside belongs to your brother. So you can't take it with you, but you can check what's inside as long as you put it back. What he handed me was an old key. According to the lawyer, it's the key to the drawer in my dad's study desk or something like that. What could it be now? Is it a letter expressing his grievances against me at the very end? Honestly, I wasn't eager, but I couldn't stand the thought of my brothers doing whatever they wanted with Dad's belongings without me knowing. I reluctantly got up and stepped into my dad's study, which I hadn't entered in a while. It had been completely closed until recently, and the air was a bit stale, but I thought I could still faintly smell my dad. I shook off the urge to get sentimental and opened the window to let in some fresh air. Then I approached the desk and unlocked the drawer. The drawer opened more easily than I expected. Inside was a thick letter with my name on it. It was my dad's familiar handwriting. As expected, is it filled with complaints about me? With a heavy heart, I reached for the unsealed letter and checked its contents. John, dear Lisa Smith, first of all, I'm sorry for starting this letter so formally. If you're reading this, I'm probably no longer in this world. The letter began with a mix of formality and words that seemed like a novel's dialogue, making me wonder if my father was serious or joking. The letter contained various things. He wrote about how he took me in but wondered if someone as awkward as he could raise a daughter. Being a single parent, he worried about making me feel lonely. He was constantly anxious about whether I would dislike him when I hit my teenage years. As a parent of the opposite sex and someone who was admittedly awkward. That's why he was worried. However, contrary to his fears, I continued to treat him the same during my teenage years, which made him incredibly happy and is something he could still vividly remember. That's why he felt so guilty and sorry for making me take care of him when he became bedridden. He wanted me to live more freely, without worrying about him. He wanted me to be happy. His clumsy expressions of love were written over several pages. Dad. My vision started to blur naturally. Oh no. If I get this letter wet, who knows what my brother, who has ownership rights, might say. Knowing it was impolite, I hurriedly wiped my tears with my sleeve. All this time, I had been wrong. About my dad's thoughts and his kindness. If this letter is true, even the condo matter was done out of consideration for me. And he had suggested moving to a facility multiple times. In the empty study, the sound of my sniffles echoed quietly. The letter continued further. As I read on casually, my pace gradually slowed down. What? No way. A series of shocking cold facts followed, in stark contrast to the warm content earlier. They were about my mom and brother, things I had no idea about. The land my dad left for my brother, including this home and land, was worth almost nothing. The vacant buildings had been appraised and were known to be unsellable. There were other facts I didn't know. My dad had become a cosigner for a business run by a friend. Of course, after my dad passed away, as stated in the will, the role of cosigner was passed on to my brother, who inherited everything. That included my dad's negative legacy. But why? Isn't this harassment towards my brother and mother? Regardless of my mom, even if my brother was influenced by her and hasn't shown his face since dad collapsed, he should still be considered his child. The fact that he paid child support is proof of that, isn't it? My questions were answered in the next page. John, Lisa, what I'm about to write may be hard to believe. But please accept it as fact. Your brother Tom is not my child. Have I told you before? Your mom had an affair. Tom was conceived with her partner at that time. It's embarrassing to admit, but I only realized Tom wasn't my biological son when I noticed your mom's strange behavior towards you. That's when I found out about her affair and that Tom wasn't mine. Even though we're not related by blood, I decided to treat Tom as my son back then. That's why, even after the divorce and when Tom was taken in by your mom, I continued to pay child support until he became an adult. But I was naive. The demands from your mom and others just kept escalating. Moreover, they said that if I had money to spend on Lisa, I should give it to them instead. It was one thing for them to criticize me, but I couldn't stand how they spoke ill of you even after we separated. They only saw me as a source of money. So, I decided to get back at them. I decided to pass on the worthless land and the role of cosigner to Tom. I was stunned by the content. I knew my mom had an affair, but I never imagined my brother was the child from that affair. But that explains why her attitude towards me and my brother was so vastly different. And my mom, who drove my dad to such revenge, is indeed heartless. John, but this plan has one flaw, and that's you, Lisa. I can't leave you anything in the inheritance, and that deeply pains me. After much research and with help from friends, I learned about something called a living gift. It requires the consent of both you and me, Lisa, but this way, I can leave you a small part of my inheritance. Of course, if your mom finds out this is a living gift, she might try to interfere in any way possible. If things go wrong, Tom might end up having to forfeit everything he inherited. That's why I had to give you my condo under false pretenses. I knew it would hurt you, but I had no choice. Lisa, I know an apology isn't enough. Even though there was no other way, I'm sorry for lying and hurting you. Finally, Lisa, thank you for growing up to be such a kind person. I felt sorry for making you take care of me, but it also made me happy. From now on, truly live for yourself. And be happier than ever before. I've always loved you dearly. Your dad will always wish for your happiness. So that's how it was. Uncontrollable tears streamed down my cheeks one after another. I wasn't being pushed away by my dad after all. He was clumsily but desperately trying to protect me. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for misunderstanding. I'm sorry for thinking you were pushing me away. I'm sorry for realizing your kindness only now. My sob-filled apologies echoed sadly in the empty room. Several years passed after my dad's funeral. Since then, I've been living in the condo my dad left me. My relationship with Mr. Brown started while caring for my dad, and now we're blessed with children and everything is going well. As for my mom and brother, I got a call from them only once, a few months after the funeral. No, that's misleading. After that one call, I blocked their numbers. The reason was simple, it was about the inheritance my brother received from Dad. As soon as I answered, my brother started complaining about me and Dad. He said it was ridiculous that the old man's land and buildings were worthless. He claimed he hadn't been told about being a cosigner. He accused us of deceiving him, calling us frauds, and so on. When I suggested he could renounce the inheritance, he said it couldn't be done after 3 months had passed. Moreover, he claimed that because of this, our mom became stressed, weakened, and eventually bedridden. He cursed at me, demanding how I would take responsibility and threatening to sue me. Honestly, I couldn't care less about that. Sure, it might have seemed deceitful, but it was my brother who eagerly accepted all of Dad's inheritance without checking thoroughly. I have no reason to be blamed. Realizing that arguing was pointless, I hung up and immediately blocked my brother's and Mom's numbers. However, if they did sue me, I couldn't ignore it. So, I asked the lawyer who helped with Dad's inheritance to mediate. I get regular email updates, and it seems things are going well so far. Dad, I am happy now. As the spring breeze blew, a small smile appeared as I looked at my child sleeping in my arms. Sure, I'm still a bit troubled by the situation with my brother and Mom. But I have people helping me and a partner who supports me. And I've been blessed with children who are growing up healthy and strong. Honestly, I still regret not being able to show my dad his grandchild's face. But surely living a happy and fulfilling life is the best way to honor him. Mike and I will be happy with our 3 kids. That's what I promised once again to my dad in heaven.